Hey, John Fink here from Gamer HQ. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to install Adrenaline so you can emulate your PSP games. First of all, you're going to need to be running Henkaku on version 6.60 firmware PS Vita. If this will install the permanent patch, if you're running a version above 6.60, it's going to need to be reapplied every time you want to run a custom game or run an emulator. So that's a tutorial for a whole other video. But what we're going to do is we're going to start Vita Shell. Some people use molecular shell. It really doesn't matter as long as you have the ability to start an FTP server. So what we're going to do is start it, hit start. We're going to scroll down, and I already have it set to FTP. So you could change it to USB, but then you wouldn't have access to the higher root directories that you would need, the higher root partitions. So once you have it set to FTP, we're going to hit select, and as you can see, my IP is 192.168.1.150, and the port is LEET 1337. So what we're going to do from this point forward is we're going to go to our computer, and we're going to copy over the necessary files. Once we have our FTP server set up, we need to download the most current version of Adrenaline 6.9. We also need to get an FTP client. If you already have FileZilla or Ducky or any of these other ones, you don't need to use this step. We also need to download the 6.61 version firmware for the PSP. So I've included the links in all the in the description below. So I've already downloaded Adrenaline VPK. I've already downloaded WinSCP, and I've already downloaded the 6.61 version of the firmware for the installation. Once we have those files downloaded, we're going to go to our downloads. We're going to choose rename for the eBoot, the firmware, and we're going to change it to 661. Then we're going to go to our FTP client, and I've already saved my information, so you would just put in your host name, which is the IP that it says on the screen, and the port number, which is 1337, and click login. You're going to be prompted for a username probably, so you'll just hit OK and disregard those. Now, since we're already here, we can upload our files. Now I have mine saved to the desktop, so I'm going to copy, bring mine down, and I put them in a VPK directory to keep everything nice and organized. Now we're going to back out a little bit, and we're going to grab our firmware. We're going to put it in the root directory, and we're going to have to move this here in a minute. This process will take just a second because it is a larger file. Once we've done that, we're going to back out of UX0, and we're going to go to UR0, and we're going to go to TIE, and we're going to download the config file. So we'll just bring that over here. I've already got a copy, and we'll choose edit. You can use Notepad++ or use your editor that comes with your FTP program. It should do the word formatting properly with the character turns and everything. So what we're doing is we're looking for the kernel section, and we're going to add this line right here. I've included this line in the description below so you can copy and paste it in. Once we've got that pasted into a new line, we'll save it, and we'll re-upload it back to the same directory. I've made no changes, so I don't really need to update it. Once we've got all those files uploaded, we can disconnect from WinSCP or your FTP program, and we can go back to the Vita. Once we've got all our files copied over, we can exit out of the FTP, and what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down to our VPK directory, hit X, find our Adrenaline plugin, our Adrenaline app, and hit X on that. It's going to ask if you want to install. It's going to tell you it's going to need additional extended permissions to install. You're going to hit X. Now you have to have unsafe homebrew enabled to install Adrenaline SDK like you would any of your other apps. If you don't have that, go back to your Henkaku settings and enable unsafe firmware. Once we have that installed, we're going to go back up. We're going to copy, we're going to move our 6.61 PBP. We're going to go back up to dot dot. No, we're not. I take that back. We're going to stay here. We're going to go into apps. We're going to scroll all the way down until we find PSPEMUCFW, and we're going to paste it into this directory. Okay, now that we've got all those files copied, we're going to scroll all the way down until we can find our adrenaline bubble. We're going to start that up. So you should see this now, and you should see an oh so familiar screen here in a moment. You're going to press X to install the PSP 6.61 firmware for memory card. It's going to load it. It found it. It's creating the directories. Now this is just scan a bunch of text. If this is your first time installing Adrenaline, it'll ask you if you want to download the 6.61 firmware, and it'll download and install it for you. If this is your second time because you've crashed the first one, or it didn't work because you didn't have the line for the kernel module, then you're going to have to do this to get there. Okay, it's going to tell you it's installed successfully, and it's going to press X to boot PSP, XMB, and you're going to see the boot screen for this PSP. And we're not going to concern ourselves with the settings here, so we're going to scroll over and hit OK. And that's it for the Adrenaline portion. So what we're going to do to get our game on here to make sure that it's working is we're going to back out. We're going to hold down the PlayStation button, hit Settings, and we're going to scroll down to Exit PSPEMU Application. We're going to scroll back up to our PS Vita shell, and we're going to restart our FTP client. And from here, we're going to copy a game over. Just give me 1 second. Once we have our FTP back up, we're going to scroll. We're going to go to where we have our games. I'm going to copy just one game, and we're going to go to UX0, and we're going to go to PSPEMU. If you don't have an ISO directory, just create one. And I've already got a game in here actually, so what I'll do is I'll copy another game over. And it should do CSOs as well. I've heard there's been some issues with it working properly sometimes, like it'll hang or crash, so ISOs are definitely the way you want to go. And I'll speed this up in the editing process, or I'll just cut it out altogether. Alright, the games are copied over, so we're going to back out of the FTP client again. And we're going to back out of Vita Shell. Scroll back down to Adrenaline. If you like what you saw, now if you did everything right, you should be able to scroll over to your memories card and it'll list your games. So this is taking a second, so we'll scroll down here to memory card or memory stick, and we'll hit X, and you can see, as you can see, we got both of our games and they load just fine. So we'll start this one. So that's all there is to it. If you have more CSOs, ISOs, copy them over. If you have directories for your e-boots, you'll copy them into the PSP game directory. If you like what you saw, like, comment, and subscribe. That's all.